Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about too much for a junior. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, I started my first job 3 months ago, contracted as a full stack web developer after 2 years of studying. They did tell me that they needed someone passionate to learn, which definitely was my case. After 3 months of usual web dev stuff, the product needed some graphic programming with shaders at work, so they told me that I needed to do that. I'm all about learning, but I did not receive any mentorship, and the web dev tasks that were given to me were, in my opinion, way too complex already for a junior. Updating all the dependencies of the product being one, I still managed to figure it out all by myself. But I think what they asked me to do now is too much. Even though I do like the field of graphics programming, video games and all the stuff, asking me to do this with my salary and experience seems wrong to me. What should I do? Well, yeah, graphics programming for a junior software developer. That's gonna take some adjustment. It's a whole, like, if you're a web developer and you haven't done graphics, this is like a whole different it's a whole different field. I've had these questions related to people who want to be games programmers, and I try to tell them that games programmers and graphics and so forth, guys, it's very different from web. It's very different from like most things that you do. It's a very specific set of skills in comparison to what most people are doing. It's not that you can't learn it, it's more, but it takes time. It's not, if you took a whole, if you take a full boot camp on web development, you won't learn probably the first thing that you will need to figure out, apart from, of course, regular programming, but you won't know the first thing about how to deal with graphics and web game development and things like that. So basically, I wrote back to the subscriber and I tried to tell the person in question the thing that I usually thought about as well, because I had a very similar, not as extreme as this, but mine wasn't. I wasn't put in a graphics situation. I was put in a finance situation at my first job as a junior software developer, where there was no mentorship, no support whatsoever. They literally put me alone on the project. I've never had a job in my first ever, right, in programming at the very least. And the system that I was working on was an invoice. Well, it's not an invoice, but a salary management system, which requires, of course, taxation calculations and things like that. And the solution they had was that, oh no, we don't have time to teach you or tell you or help you and give you any support when it comes to figuring out how should the system do the calculations. You have to call the government's finance department and ask them about the calculations. Just like whoever does taxes, right? Literally, that was the solution, right? I was way in over my head, and I actually did have had a few people who were more experienced who said, yeah, it seems a little bit tough for a junior to deal with this sort of situation. And I'm telling you the same thing. This might be a little bit tough for a junior. So let me tell you what I did, and I hope that the same thing can apply to you. So this was enormously stressful, of course, and the reality was that the reason why I put up with that situation was because at the time this was my only option. So I tried my best, I tried to learn, I did as well as I could. And you might be in a similar sort of situation, because I have been in situations where I have been put in, not as a junior necessarily, but in a position where it's not a good situation. It's very difficult to deal with it, and I found that stakeholders who do this are they're either ignorant of, or like they don't really understand. This might be a lot to ask from someone who is a programmer or a junior or something like that. That's very classic. Or they're simply desperate. They are aware of that this is a bad thing, but they don't have any other choice. So this is the best they can come up with. And the way that I tried to look at it was that this is paid learning. And it was. I mean, it was enormously stressful, and it didn't. At the end of the day, I'm very happy that I left that position. But did teach me things. And that's the thing that I suggest that you do, because it might be that if you solve this thing, because you can look at it as just another challenge for you. If you solve this, you might actually get a pat on the back or pat on the shoulder saying that, hey, actually, wow, you are really talented. Even if you don't solve it, even if it turns out that you just, they get displeased, or you might get fired for all I know. We don't know, right? Because it is up to the employer in question. When you look at your next position, this is still experience that you have gained, and it's something that you can bring to the table and say that, yeah, like I've done some graphics programming, etc., which is something that is uncommon. And trust me when I say this, if you told me that you had to do these sorts of things at like a junior level, it would be something that at least I could appreciate that, oh, okay, that's pretty advanced, and I would understand that this is not something that would have come easy to you. So it's not gonna, even if you are unhappy with the situation, you don't have to look at it as, as something that you have to put up with, but it can be a meaningful and useful experience for you, similar to how I tell some people who are unhappy that they work in a shitty code base. If you're really, really unhappy, go and work somewhere else, because you can always, that's a card you can always play. But in some cases it might be useful for you to try a little bit to see if you can make this thing work, because everything is always hard in the beginning. And I can tell you that it was the same thing for me. And I'm not going to say it was a pleasant experience, but I did become a better software developer from trying. And the job I got after, I moved from a high complexity domain such as finances, and I was moved into another position where I had a lot of legacy system to deal with, where the guy before me had also had quit due to the fact that he couldn't deal with that situation, or he didn't want to deal with that situation. I picked up the challenge of trying to fix this and really try to do my best, and I learned quite a lot, and I became a lot better at, in this case it was front-end development, than I used to be, because I had to get over that hump. And that's something that I think is just a generally healthy thing for you to consider. That, I'm not saying that this is specifically the sort of hill that you want to climb, but everything that is difficult in the beginning is usually going to end up with you learning something useful at the end of it. If you have too many expectations on you and you really feel bad about it, you can always go somewhere else. But I always suggest people to give it the old college try, or like give it a shot and see if you can overcome the challenges, because this is going to be tricky for you. But I think that it's something you might be able to deal with, and even if it turns out poorly, you have learned something from it and you got paid doing it. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's not uncommon, guys, for you to get put in a position where people ask more of you than what you can deliver. Because the reality is, guys, that, as I've said many times before, guys, there are no requirements on managers in IT to know the first thing about software development. Most of them don't know anything, so they don't know if they're giving you a hard thing or an easy thing in many cases. And in some cases, as I said, they're just desperate. I've been there too, where they don't have any other options, so they just put things on you and hope that you can learn how to swim. And if you can do well there, you're going to impress some people. And even if it doesn't go so well, you're going to learn something doing it. I've been here before a few times, and I know that it sucks, and it really comes down to how much of suckiness can you deal with before you decide to, yeah, no, actually I don't want to put up with this anymore. If you can talk to them and explain how you feel, that's always a good thing, but at the very least I suggest that you give it a bit of a go, see if you can learn something from it, because it is, as I said, worst case scenario, you're getting paid to learn something, which is always a good thing for you when you want to do the next thing. And hopefully it's going to be an experience for you where you become a better software developer. And as I said, you can always move on, but I suggest that you give it a try first and really feel it out if you can't solve the situation in some other way. If you feel like you're being too lowly paid or something like that, start immediately to look at some other options while you're doing this, because it's double value. If you keep the job and get paid to learn things while you're looking for another place to work, it's just a good situation for you. That's what I suggest to you. Have a great day.